And we're being recorded. Actually, okay. Any announcements? Susan.
Hi, thanks so much. I just wanted to give a quick announcement. For those of you that aren't already aware, Lane County has made some changes to our recycling opportunities, and there are now new recycling opportunities for number 1 and number 2 plastic bottles, jugs, and jars. I highly recommend, I'm going to be putting into the window, the chat window, you'll be able to see a flyer. I'm going to put it in both English and Spanish language so you can see some of the new opportunities for your recycling. I want to make everybody aware of that because last month at our meeting, we also discussed the opportunity to do 245 collecting events in our neighborhood. And I'm very happy to say that Kathy McGrath has volunteered to partner with me on bringing those back to the neighborhood. Y'all may recall that Kathy, there she is waving. She was running these several years ago, and John introduced me to her today. We had a great conversation, and we're very excited to say that come September, we'll have some events. We're working on the details, but we'll get that to you. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is if you are on Instagram and you're not following River Road Community Organization, you might not have known about this meeting, but I'm sure you all are on Instagram. You saw the notices and y'all are here for that reason. I'm sure of it. If you aren't, go follow us on Instagram, please. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Susan. Julie?
Thank you. I just wanted to express my gratitude for the wonderful newsletter that was sent out. The board did a wonderful job and others who worked on it. Thank you very much.
Round of applause for Susan and Charlesy. Great job. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we have a brief board report, John.
Thank you, Claire. Good to see everybody here tonight. The board met last month and we passed one motion of significance to you guys. The rest of them were more or less bookkeeping for the board to work more effectively. But the thing we did agree to do was to send a letter to the Planning Commission outlining our request for how the Planning Commission revises the Greenway Ordinance, which controls most of the area on the east side of River Road. We gave them 13 different requests and hopefully we'll hear from them soon about what they are. I'll make sure I get that up in our webpage so you can read it. I won't go through all 13 items, but basically we're trying to align the Greenway Ordinance with our desires about how the neighborhood should be protected, and we'll see how it goes. We'll keep you informed. Thank you.
Maybe we can link to that letter in the July newsletter. Okay, any other announcements? All right, then, charging right along, we got a request from Dylan Plummer from the Sierra Club to come talk to us about initiatives for Fossil Free Eugene. So take it away, Dylan.
Great, thank you. And if it's possible, you could make me a co-host so I could share a screen with some slides on it.
Okay. John, what's our time allotment for Dylan?
I think I had.
If I were unmuted, I would say 10 minutes.
I'm gonna zip through it.
Okay. And there you go, your co-host.
Great, thank you. Just give me 1 second. All right, is that working for folks?
It's working, thank you.
Great, and hopefully you're seeing a big slide.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so thanks again so much for having me here to present to your lively neighborhood association. You all have, I think, the biggest attendance of any neighborhood association I've spoken to thus far, so major kudos for that. Like I said earlier, my name is Dylan Plummer. I use he, him pronouns. I'm based here in South Eugene, but I'm working across Oregon and Washington on building electrification with the Sierra Club. the national as well as the local group and the state chapter. And I've been part of the coalition for Fossil Free Eugene for a number of years now. And we are based on a platform with 3 legs. First, transitioning our utilities in the city to 100% renewable energy by 2030. EWEB is already well on its way to reaching that number with an energy portfolio made up of about 80 to 85% decarbonized electricity. Transitioning new construction to all electric by 2023. So making sure that our new buildings are built all electric so they can take full advantage of that renewable energy, which I'll talk about in just a second. And then also creating a fund to help low income and BIPOC or Black, Indigenous, people of color communities transition to high efficiency electric appliances so that the financial onus isn't put on those households that can least afford it. So why are we talking about gas in buildings, right? When we think about climate change, usually we're thinking about the point of extraction. So that's like fracking and mining and drilling, or we're thinking about the point of combustion. So maybe let's talk smokestacks and cars. But increasingly, gas in buildings is becoming one of the major sources of pollution. The New York Times in 2019 wrote that new data shows that natural gas has become the biggest driver of emissions growth globally in recent years. And gas companies connect at least one new house to gas every minute, totaling over 560,000 gas hookups every year nationwide. So this is dramatically expanding industry, needlessly hooking new construction to fossil fuel infrastructure. And when I talk about gas, I'm talking about what many know as quote unquote natural gas, which is really just.
We lost you there. Did you mute yourself?
Claire, maybe we should move on down the agenda and let Dylan back in later if he can come back.
Well, his image is still here.
Okay. Do some magic.
I don't know. Dylan, will you send us a chat if you can hear?
And I'm back.
Yay, okay.
So hopefully you can see my screen again. Going well? Cool.
Yeah.
So electricity, on the other hand, not fossil gas, is extremely climate friendly, especially in Oregon and Washington, where we have an abundance of hydroelectric energy, and we have 100% renewable laws that are pushing investor-owned utilities to go to 100% renewable energy, such as hydro, wind, and solar. We have a huge amount of inexpensive renewable energy already on our grid, and swapping out gas appliances for electric in Eugene or in Oregon can reduce the average household's climate footprint by 50%, which is the equivalent of giving up a car. And so what we're saying is that when we're building new homes, we can build in these carbon emission reductions by just building all electric off the bat, right? And so that puts no increased financial onus on the resident of that house, doesn't change their lifestyle dramatically, and it has significant emissions. That said, like I mentioned earlier, the impacts of frack gas are very sizable. In Oregon, nearly 43% of all energy is consumed by buildings, and it causes about 1/3 of the state's climate pollution, which is the 3rd largest chunk. There's also a new and growing body of science looking at the health impacts of burning gas in your homes. As you can imagine, combusting fossil fuels inside of closed spaces is not good for you. Think about, bringing your barbecue inside or your camp stove. And so there are a huge slew of different toxic chemicals that are polluted into the air and that cause a number of different health symptoms. Homes with gas stoves have 50% to over 400% higher nitrogen dioxide levels, which can lead to heart failure and asthma. 1 hour of cooking on gas stove produces nitrogen dioxide levels that would be illegal if found outdoors. And I think the most striking is that children in homes with gas stoves have a 42% increase of developing asthmatic symptoms and about a 20% increased chance of developing lifelong asthma. So you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I have a poisonous gas stove in my house. Never fear. There's lots of things that you can do to mitigate those harms right away. I think the first and foremost one is just making sure that you have adequate ventilation, making sure to open a window whenever you can when you're cooking and have your overhead fan on. But also to be advocating for policies to put funds online to transition existing buildings and to make sure that new buildings are not constructed with these poisonous appliances. So according to nonpartisan think tank RMI's analysis, not only does electrification benefit the climate and your health, but it also helps your pocketbook. Building an all-electric home saves $1,600 in upfront construction costs, primarily due to the cost savings from not having to connect your home to a gas pipeline. And an all-electric home has a $3,500 net present cost savings over a 15-year period because of utility bill savings because of how efficient heat pumps are that both provide heating and cooling at about 3 or 4 times the efficiency of the most efficient gas appliance on the market. So I want to talk briefly about greenwashing, because if you're a Northwest Natural customer like I am, you've probably received some kind of interesting and confusing things in the mail, and you've probably seen some advertisements about what they call renewable natural gas. And this is part of a nationwide campaign that the gas industry is waging to try to rebrand their product and their business as something that's offering renewable energy. Just a few days ago, the Oregonian reported on children's books that Northwest Natural was sending to schools to try to associate gas with positive images of baseball bats and dinosaurs and animals. And, you know, a pretty flagrant display of greenwashing. Simultaneously, there's a huge pushback. This is a picture on the right of a climate strike up in Portland with youth calling out Northwest Natural as one of the state's largest climate villains. And so at the end of the day, what we're advocating for is not cutting edge policy by any means. It's common sense climate policy. And while Eugene would be the first city in the state of Oregon to pass one of these policies, it would not be the first in the country. In fact, there are over 50 cities now in California that have passed policies such as this. There are cities in Washington, Colorado, New York City just passed one. So Eugene would be following a growing trend, but also leading our state and helping put us in our, you know, what I think is our rightful place as the front of the pack on climate in Oregon and putting Oregon at the front of the pack on climate nationwide. So in November of 2021, 2 motions were passed. One said that staff should come back and looking at legal avenues for making sure that all new buildings starting on January 1, 2023 were built all electric. And there's a work session coming up on July 25th to discuss this further. And then the second one was looking at creating a roadmap for comprehensive and equitable electrification of existing building stock by 2045. So that'll be looking at how can we utilize federal, statewide, and local funds and generate revenue to provide incentives and subsidies for homeowners to retire gas appliances at the end of their life and replace them with these high efficiency heat pumps that again offer both heating and cooling, which will be critical as our climate is warming and, you know, we're already experiencing severe impacts like the heat dome of last summer. And here's just a slide with some of the big kind of headlines we've gotten. It's been extremely well covered in the press. The campaign, which is made up of a coalition of racial justice, economic justice, and environmental justice groups, such as
this guy is talking about
Association.
Northwest Natural and the campaign to green it up.
We are, just really pushing hard on this. So what I'm presenting to the River Road neighborhood association is one, as individuals, I really would encourage you all to testify at the next city council public forum and say that you support the proposed motions. And if you're interested in that, I'll share around a link at the end of this presentation with more information and some talking points about how to speak about this and what exactly we're saying. And then two, we're asking that neighborhood associations pass resolutions to voice their support for these climate policies and encourage the city council to act on climate. We know we have a really strong majority of council members that support this, but they're facing big spending from the Northwest Natural, which is the state's largest fossil fuel company. So they need to hear from their community that they're supported and that this is a good idea. If
You have 1 minute, Stefan. I mean, sorry, Dylan, you have 1 minute.
Great. This is my last slide. So all I'll say is if you all are interested in that, there's some template language. The Friendly Area Neighbors and the Downtown Neighborhood Association have both passed similar resolutions last year. Other supporters include the Democratic Party of Lane County that passed a resolution, the Eugene Human Rights Council, many statewide organizations such as the Oregon Just Transition Alliance, Oregon League of Conservation Voters, and many more have all weighed in support of these efforts. And after 2 years of community dialogue, we think the city of Eugene is ready to help lead the state towards a clean energy future. And thank you so much for your time. I really hope that you all will consider acting to support these common sense policies.
That was fast. I wish we had more time for discussion. Can you put in the chat your contact information and the link that you mentioned? I appreciate you coming and alerting us to this effort.
Yeah, thank you all so much for having me. I'll send a follow-up email, and maybe I could follow up with an email to John or someone else, and you all could share it with the rest of the list or something like that with some more information. Is that okay?
We send out a newsletter on the first of every month, so send it to me the last of the week of the month, and we'll get it in there.
Great, and I'll drop a couple more links in the meantime.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye. John, turn it over to you.
Okay,
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
John? You're John.
yeah, but I'll be soon turning it over to you, John.
Sorry.
Yes, we're fortunate to have the Northeast neighbors come to talk to us about a motion that they would like us to consider that we put into the newsletter, I do believe. And so I'll turn it over to John Faville and to Kevin Reed, and you guys have 30 minutes to talk to us, have discussion, and potentially vote for that motion.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Can you hear me now? We're having trouble.
It's
before.
still a bit low, John.
It's my voice. I can't cure it. I do what I can. How's
Okay.
that? Okay. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about what the arterial bridge is, just so we all share some of the basics. Then I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, and he's going to talk about why we're making such a push for it and why we're here. I wonder if I could get a screen share opportunity. I want to put up a diagram to show where the bridge would be and what it would entail. Can you make me a co-host?
You're
John?
muted, Claire.
Oh, Claire.
You should be good to go, John.
Okay, let me try this.
Mine says he's disabled, Claire, or the participant screen sharing is disabled.
He's a co-host, John.
Okay, thank you. Here we go.
There we go. Hey. Okay, this shows the section that's called the arterial bridge, plus a portion that would fall into the Santa Clara neighborhood. And I just want to start by saying this is part of an overall Beltline project that's been going on for decades, first in the planning phase and then in the phase of gaining environmental approval. and is now about to move into the phase of finding the funding to do the work. The arterial bridge is just a small part of the overall picture, but it's one that is detachable. It's a standalone and doesn't depend on the rest of the projects. A couple of things to say about it. It is not an ODOT project. It is not a highway project. It is a City of Eugene local arterial, meaning it will be at local speeds and not highway speeds and really serve local trips. It will also be multimodal, and this is very important. There will be dedicated lanes for walking and a dedicated lane for cyclists. The basic designs of it need to be finalized, but they create the potential to also in the future have dedicated lanes for transit. And even initially, transit will be able to move on the bridge in a way that it can't on the Beltline, which of course means that LTD has been enthusiastic about this project from the beginning and is still pushing for it very strongly. I want to give a number because we've asked them sort of how many local trips are we talking about? The ODOT consultants have done some calculations and tell us that that means roughly 17,000 daily local trips will move off of the Beltline and onto a safer, more convenient local arterial. Before I charge on, I just want to make sure, are there any questions? Does anyone have anything they want to ask that I can speak, not the whys of it, but the what it will actually entail?
John, can I suggest we hold questions till the end and we'll handle them
Oh,
through the
fine,
chat?
Okay.
Thank
I'm
you.
fine with that. I do want to give a couple of last pieces of information. The bridge project stops shortly beyond the Willamette River, as you see, and then becomes a further project that we'll be probably hearing from Santa Clara about in the near future. The bridge project is big. The initial phase of finalizing the plans and acquiring the right of way is about 6 million, and then construction is about 119 million. So it's a very, very large project. We are gathering all the support we can in order to move it along. With that, I think, Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you and I will stop sharing.
Kevin, you need to unmute.
Most everybody likes it when I'm muted, so thank you for letting us come and share with you tonight. So this project has been in the works for, as John was saying, for the past 7 years, and we've been intimately involved in it from its inception. And really, the whole premise behind it was to create a connectivity between the two areas that currently we do not have. We don't have a link to the Santa Clara area across the river that you can make way to by bike or by foot. And by car if you live in that neighborhood. And the reason why it's so important to us is we have a lot of new things that have occurred over here over the last few years. Lots more people. We have a new Winco store here. We have Costco. We have other services that people in Santa Clara deserve to be able to have access to and shouldn't have to fight traffic to get to it and risk themselves when they're on the Beltline, because it's gotten to be quite hazardous coming to and from. Also, being able to get emergency vehicles to and from the east and the west has been problematic at best. And we can't, the buses won't even put a guaranteed bus route on there because they can't guarantee that they could serve their constituents over there and get them to and from on time. So that, and the fact that we've just announced that we have a 14-acre new park that just got purchased by the City of Eugene. It was gifted to them by the developers of the Evergreen development that currently developed all of the River Ridge Golf Course. And they also are in the process of gifting the city the greenway along the riverbank that's outside the UGB, so that the city can continue on that greenway bike path all the way underneath the Beltline, all the way down the river, down where the two rivers converge. So we really are supportive of all that, and we think that that would be a great attribute to this area and be well received by most of our neighbors. And the whole premise here is that, you know, we can't change the fact that we have most of the densification occurring in the city in our area because we had most of the raw land that was left for development. But what we haven't gotten from the city is any infrastructure development to help take some of the pressure off of the streets in our area. So over the years, it's gotten worse and worse and worse to the extent it's not safe and it's not very friendly. And so what we're hoping to be able to do is be able to open up some of that, take some of the pressure off of these streets by being able to create this connectivity between the two neighborhoods and be able to access some of the attributes and assets that are on our side, and also be able to access things that are going on over there in the Santa Clara River Road neighborhood also. The other point I'd like to make is that we are not asking you as our neighbors to pony up the bill on this thing. John and I have dedicated our time and our efforts to trying to go out and solicit money from those entities that have these pools of resources available to them that ask people to make applications to get that money. We are diligently working with everyone who is involved and has access to those kinds of funds to get their support and to help get some of that money left for us on this side of the river so that we can be able to take advantage of the opportunities that it can create for us. And so, again, we're not asking for our neighbors to have to pick up the tab here, but we certainly are asking for our neighbors' support. I believe personally that your voice and your support, no matter what it may be, if you have sheer numbers, you get the attention of the city council. And I don't know about you, but I've lived here all my life, so I can tell you, I've always felt like I didn't get the same kind of attention on this side of the river as other folks get on the other side of the river. And it's time for that to change. It's time for us to get our day in the sun. And I think that by us being able to bring our neighborhood associations together and try to find some common ground and some continuity and some consistency and some like-minded ideas, that we can get the people that are in the decision-making position, we can influence their decision-making process. And I think that this is kind of a two-pronged thing that we're hoping to garner here. That is to kind of forge this relationship with the different neighborhood associations, whether it's the Cal Young Neighborhood Association or the Santa Clara Neighborhood Association or the River Road Association or the Northeast Neighbors. But combined, we have over 26,000 residents, or we have 26% of all of the people that live in the city live on this side. Those four neighborhood associations garner 26% of the total population. That's a pretty serious influencer when it comes to getting the attention of the city council and the other decision makers. So we're asking for a couple of things. We'd like to garner your support on this bridge for what it can offer our neighbors, but we'd also like to try to get a stronger relationship with you and your neighborhood association so that we can join forces, so that when it comes to us being able to support each other and getting things done as our neighborhoods need them, we can throw our hat in the ring and be able to come together and support each other in our endeavors. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So if you have any questions or anything you'd like to share with us, please feel free.
So I'm going to ask folks to raise their hands with the reaction mode, and I'll take your questions. I'll start with Stefan.
Hi, I just have a question about how the connection would be from River Road to this bridge. The diagram that was shown, it wasn't clear to me how, if I'm heading north on River Road, I would get onto this bridge.
John, unmute, please.
It's only a part of the big picture of improvements to the Beltline. And the whole package of improvements would reach from the Delta interchange to the River Road interchange. But the bridge is just a small piece of that. It just gets local traffic over the river and then hooks it up with Division and Hunsaker and Beaver. So the fuller picture is probably bigger than ODOT is going to be able to find funds for in the immediate future. But this piece of the puzzle, the arterial bridge, is the one that is available to us. It's standalone, and it's what ODOT is making their top priority for this area. Does that answer your question, Stefan?
No, it doesn't, because
Okay.
what I'm wondering, I mean, yeah, the arterial bridge makes sense, and I might very much like to be able to get over into your neighborhood, but it wasn't clear to me from the map or the diagram how River Road would connect to the arterial bridge.
So it,
River Road would connect to Division, which would connect to the arterial bridge.
that connects to Green Acres.
It connects to Green
Okay.
Acres.
Okay, I got
sorry,
it.
I gave you a long answer to what should have been a short one. Okay.
Right, okay, thank
So I'm going to go to Rob Zako next.
Thank you, John. I didn't raise my hand, but since you called on me,
I'm pressing it. I knew you wanted to say something.
well, so I'm Rob Zako. I don't live in the neighborhood. I live in Amazon neighborhood, and I and my organization don't have an opinion for or against this project, and we're not trying to influence you. What I will say is it's a lot of money. As I recall the presentation in February, it's $120 million, something like that, for just the bridge. And there's nobody, I mean, the federal government and the state government doesn't have just money floating around for that kind of thing. The Oregon Department of Transportation is looking to be out of money in another year or so just to maintain the highways they have, let alone build new ones. And so I don't want to discourage you from supporting this and making a symbolic statement, but I do want to say that effectively you're saying that your needs are more important than other needs in Eugene, in Springfield and Lane County. And whether or not this gets built or how soon it gets built is really going to be a larger decision about what politicians, local, state, and some federal politicians say is most important. So if you think this is most important, I think you need to make a case of how it's more important than other needs elsewhere in the region, because it's really going to be a regional funding thing. It's not like there's some money just for Northeast Neighbors or River Road in Santa Clara. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. The next hand up is Claire.
Can I speak to that first?
Oh, okay, please.
You know, I understand your concern, Rob, but I think it's our job to make the best case for our project we can, and to articulate that to ODOT and to the city, and then they enter the fray and fight for the funds. There are big pockets of transportation funds available, and there is this large money vacuum up north of us called Portland that will draw them all in. I would like to see some of them spent here. I don't believe it's simply a politician backroom decision. ODOT has set this bridge as the second priority to the improvements to the Delta interchange itself within our area. And I think it's entirely reasonable for us to come together, make the case for our needs, and then have city staff, have ODOT, have LTD, have LCOG sort out the decision about what matters. And yes, and also the Oregon Transportation Committee. But we shouldn't stop ourselves from making the case for our interest. We should let that get sorted out by the decision makers.
Thank you, John. We've got about 8 more minutes for questions and discussion if we leave 5 minutes for a potential vote. So I'd ask everybody, both presenters and responders, to be as concise as possible. Claire, you're up next.
I was just following up on the first question, Stefan's question. If I'm driving north on River Road, then do I turn right onto Division and go down that terrible street called Division in front of Fred Meyer's in order to access this?
That's what you would do now, but in the long term, as changes get made to Hunsaker especially, there will be a smoother route. Okay.
Okay, that's because that's not necessarily a safe one. And does it comes in, how does it deal with the gravel yard?
The gravel, the sand and gravel people have been in on the discussion of this project for 25 years, and they are very I think it's pretty clearly understood how that right-of-way acquisition will occur.
Okay, thank you.
Claire, I would add one more thing, and that is that there is a proposal to modify division, including a roundabout to make it safer.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you, John, yes.
Jolene?
You're on mute, Jolene.
I
Not
got it.
now.
Thanks. Between my hand and my mute, I'm having some difficulties. I wanted to make the point that we had someone from ODOT present a while back about this
February.
project, among others, right?
In
And
February.
one of the comments that they made in response to a question about the status of the Beltline Bridge in our neighborhood was that it was in poor condition. And it wasn't at the top of their project list, but it was in poor condition. So just in terms of need, if we need a bridge over the river, this would present an alternative. And it wouldn't just serve the local community, honestly. I mean, anybody who's driven on the Beltline knows that there's so much congestion and risk for accident that it doesn't just have to do with local access. But I just wanted to make the point that having another bridge over the river may be a safe idea. I love the idea that there are also active transportation options, including biking and pedestrian access. And I love the idea of transit lanes. And I think this would integrate nicely with an MX system. That's all.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jolene.
ma'am.
I'm going to sign you up for our advocacy team. That was great.
Kate Burley, please.
John, I know you said it could be a standalone project. What's the likelihood that they would consider building this and not the rest of the, in my humble opinion, overblown project for the rest of it?
It's quite conceivable. It really just depends on how much money becomes available. The top two priorities are finishing the work on the Delta interchange, which is only half done, and then the arterial bridge. The rest of it is just as money becomes available, and we all know how slow that is.
Does that take care of it for you, Kate?
Yep, you know, it's a crystal ball thing. Who's to say?
But
Right.
I think the big thing that we're looking at is just how much help the arterial bridge has the potential to give our neighborhoods. And beyond that, what happens in the future, we don't have control over that.
Thanks.
So I see no more hands up. Our policy, our charter states that if someone would like to make a motion, they have to have been in attendance within the past year. We pretty much know who you are, but we will put you on the honor system, obviously. I will put in the chat the motion that was suggested by John Faville, excuse me, John, I did it again. Says the River Road Community Organization supports the proposed project of constructing an arterial bridge that would cross from Green Acres Road to the Santa Clara area. Does anyone want to make that motion?
I make that motion, Carlene.
Carlene Riley moves. Is there a second?
Brenda will second it.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. It's time for discussion, and we have 8 minutes left for discussion and voting. Would someone like to speak to the motion by raising their hand? Yeah. Charles.
I would just like to kind of piggyback on what Jolene said as being involved in emergency preparedness issues. One of the things I'm concerned about is evacuation potential out of this area, and to have another means of getting out of our neighborhood, if that were important to do safely, especially in conditions of earthquake, that would matter a lot to those of us who live here, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to add one thing, and Kevin talked about the fact that LTD has difficulty planning a route along River Road because of the indeterminate this time it would take to get from River Road to Delta Highway. They actually had proposed a route that would go all the way from West 11th over to Gateway as a way to put the rim on their hub and spoke system. But when they did the analysis, they could not find a way to have a bus route run given the problems of getting from, again, River Road to Delta Highway. So that's another potential advantage as well. Julie.
Thank you. In addition to the multimodal aspect and the idea for emergency preparedness and having a bridge that could withstand the earthquake, I believe that this bridge also might prevent the idea of resurfacing once again for a Valley River Bridge to be built. Thank you.
Good
You don't
point.
want a Valley Bridge.
Okay, further discussion. I see nobody's hand, so let's put this to a vote and let's use our hands. Well, let's see. Yeah,
No, I
let's,
think we should use the reactions, dots, a red dot or a green dot or a yellow dot
Okay,
if you're abstaining.
so under reactions where you raise your hand, there's also the opportunity to do a red check mark or a black, red X mark. So those of you who have attended a meeting within the past year, please vote by, if you want to vote yes, use the green check mark. And if you want to vote no, use the red X mark. Please.
So John, you should be able to see a tally there.
Okay. Would that be under participants?
I can count. Do you want me to count?
I can count. I can see it now, at least on the
Okay.
participants
You
list.
can easily count under participants because it's just a straight line.
Right.
I just
thank
want to
you.
point out Carolyn Keener and are raising their hands, just know. Okay.
Okay, and I assume those are positives. Okay. It's not hard to tally it. There are no red marks. So this passes unanimously. John and Kevin, thank you for bringing this to you. I will craft a letter and send it your way.
Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you very much for hearing us.
Thank you. Okay, Claire, back to you.
Oh, we're to there already?
Yep.
The guy from the library.
No, actually, it's Sarai now.
Oh, Sarai. I thought I was doing the library. You were doing the Sarai.
I guess you're right. Thank you very much.
Okay, and you
forgive
can
me.
uncheck your response now.
Yes, that I was going to say that too. Okay, Sarai, it is my pleasure to introduce you, Sarai Johnson from the county, to tell us about where we are with the Navigation Center.
Thank you, John. Hello, I'm Sarai Johnson. My colleague Maria Cortez is also here tonight. We're both working on the Navigation Center project and wanted to give you a little bit of an update. Is it possible for me to share my screen? Because if it is, it would be rude.
I believe Claire's working on it.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, my dog has chosen this moment to really need my attention too. Okay, pardon me. Perfect. You can do something else for a minute, Benny. Okay, so y'all can see my screen, I assume. I'm gonna
Yes.
go ahead and get this party started. I have to move some Zoom things out of my way here, and there we go. All right. So probably many of you guys have heard about the Navigation Center. It's a low barrier shelter that is being built, and it will serve the purpose of helping people who don't have a safe place to live right now, who are awaiting a referral into permanent housing to work on removing barriers to housing that they might have. So I'm going to give you a tiny bit of an overview about what the project is, and then we have some opportunity for collaboration with with the River Road Community Organization as well as Santa Clara. So really quickly, the Navigation Center is a low barrier shelter that's designed to help people, one, have ability to bring a partner into the into the shelter with them, so they don't have to be separated out. We're welcoming people of any gender identity to this shelter, so there's not restrictions on gender, and they might be able to stay together near each other in the shelter together. And then we've got possessions, so people are able to bring their items. We will have storage near their beds, as well as larger storage for outdoor storage for larger items. And people are also allowed to bring pets into the facility, cats and dogs specifically. So no snakes, I guess, is one thing we did figure out. This is for adults who are over 18. Again, all genders are welcomed. It's for people who are currently living in an unsheltered location, which is a place that's not meant for human habitation, including cars, tents, etc. People who are awaiting housing, and we have capacity for 75 people at a time in this location. And the reason we're developing this is, while we know that housing is the main solution to houselessness, we have, as you're also very well aware, a challenge with our housing stock in our community. We don't have enough housing for everyone to live in who already lives here. So this shelter is designed to help move people from being in an unsheltered space to being in a safe place with wraparound supports to remove their barriers to housing, expedite their exit into housing, and then help them stay in housing once they exit the Navigation Center program. And one of the things that we're working on for that is, one, I'm just going to, here's our agenda, just a few things, seems longer than it's really going to be. One of the things that we're working on for this is the development of a community agreement. And so this is going to include all of these parties. Equitable Social Solutions is our program operator, and they'll be starting on the project very soon. Maria, who I mentioned, is here. She'll also be working with them directly as the shelter coordinator for Lane County, the Human Services Division, and the City of Eugene. So Human Services Division at the county and City of Eugene are program sponsors. So this is a joint project between both entities. And then we've been working with your board at River Road Community Organization, as well as Santa Clara Community Organization, to do some of this planning and to support a community agreement that will help govern the way that the Navigation Center operates in the River Road and Santa Clara communities. This community agreement will include the provider, Equitable Social Solutions, as well as our neighborhood associations, you included. We'll have Lane County and City of Eugene also sign on to this, and other specific neighbors as needed may also sign on. We're also working to connect law enforcement and emergency services and cahoots into this as well, because as you're aware, we know that there's some jurisdictional differences in the River Road area, with some properties being annexed into the City of Eugene and others not. And so we'll be working with our various law enforcement and emergency services networks to ensure coverage in and around the Navigation Center. The first thing that I'll just give you a little bit of a heads up is that this agreement, you'll receive a version of it. I need to send it to John. We'll give you a little bit of a program overview, just talking about where it is, which is at 100 River Avenue, which many of you may know, some of you might not. So it will be located there. You might have noticed there's been construction going on there for quite a while. And so we're looking at substantial completion toward the end of this week, actually. So internal construction renovation should be very close to done, and we're expecting furniture to be delivered and so forth this by the end of this month. Values in this is dignity, respect, and mutual support, both from the navigation side to the community and otherwise. And so we're looking to create a welcoming environment where people who have barriers to housing are able to work on those barriers, as I mentioned. The background section of the community agreement will be very specific about what the boundaries are, that where this might govern our communications. And the real purpose is to recognize that neighbors might experience some impacts or have some concerns and questions. And this agreement is designed to support all parties to the agreement, including the people who are guests at the Navigation Center, the service provider, and everyone who is in the neighborhood. This is not a legally binding contract, but rather it's an agreement that we're all adopting in good faith. And it does provide us some communication options and practices, as well as opportunity to take things kind of to the next level if items and issues aren't resolved as we hope they are at the front line with the provider and or another entity, which I will talk about in just a minute. The goals of this agreement are to make sure that we're documenting the ways that we intend to work together and that we have methods to make sure this agreement is honored, that we're fostering positive, respectful, and responsible relationships. We want to maximize collaboration with the community and with the Navigation Center to make sure that we're supporting and improving neighborhood livability and quality of life. And then basic rights acknowledged for everyone of personal safety, privacy, access to services, and basic needs. So just getting on the same page about what we're trying to accomplish together. So a few of the other kind of key pieces of this are we're wanting to make sure the agreements are upheld, that we're addressing root problems or root causes of some of the problems that may occur should they participate in problem solving together, and supporting direct and civil communication, which we can use some of the protocols outlined in the community agreement, which again, I'll send to John and he can share it with all of you. The agreement as it is right now is a draft, and the concept of it is that part of our work is to conduct our neighbor to neighbor outreach in the next few weeks and month or so that we can get input into the community agreement and make sure we're answering any questions that folks who are within 1,000-foot radius of the Navigation Center have, as well as folks from just slightly outside of those areas as well. It's not like a hard boundary where no one else will get to know anything, but rather a way for us to sort of prioritize who may experience some impact. There's a question mark after this because I forgot to take it out, but this is the Community Advisory Committee idea that could be a entity that would be responsible for updating, upholding, and kind of maintaining this community agreement. Their role would be to communicate, to make sure the agreement's going forward, to spur some of that collaboration we were talking about, make sure we address recurring problems before they become a huge issue, and then ensure that any member of the community has access to understanding, education, and whatever else they need in order to feel comfortable and get what they need or get involved if they're interested. The membership would include a variety of different folks, at least one chair from River Road Community Organization and one from Santa Clara. And then we'll also include some of our staff and the Equitable Social Solutions staff. And we would also want to make sure that there's room for people with lived experience, especially those who have current or past guest status at the Navigation Center. And then ultimately it will serve as a communication hub so that we'll manage an email list for people who might want updates or information and find ways to engage the community in the agreement and the work of the Navigation Center overall. Other things that this agreement covers include that communication piece I mentioned, supporting the neighborhood appearance and the culture of the neighborhood, identifying community safety protocols, and then of course, just the formalities of administration of that agreement where we have different parties sign on to it. And as I just mentioned a moment ago, one of the things that will be coming up soon is we're going to be working with River Road Community Organization, Santa Clara, and likely the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, among others, City of Eugene and Lake County, of course, included, to do some neighbor-based outreach. What we've always found in partnering with River Road Community Organization is that y'all are wonderful partners in doing that neighbor to neighbor level outreach. We know that it's much more effective to have neighbors talking to neighbors than some goon like me coming in from the government being like, hi, we're doing a thing. And you know, I don't live in this neighborhood anymore. I used to though, and my kids still do. So not always, but you know, half the time. So this is what we're looking to do, is ask for some of you and or people that you know who are in the River Road or Santa Clara community organizations to offer time potentially and get a little bit of training to support this sort of one-on-one, or maybe a couple of people going out canvassing door to door, making some phone calls, and ultimately just informing our neighbors and giving them an opportunity to ask questions. We'll train you. You'll be supported with some scripts and some FAQ information. So you'll be able to field those questions, and then opportunity for people to follow up with additional input for the community agreement, or just to get their questions answered directly by the program service operator and or county or city staff, depending on the question. So we also do plan to have a couple of different events over the summer. The Navigation Center is slated to open in early August. And so we have a bit of time between now and then to do some of this door-to-door / neighbor-to-neighbor work to get us ready for that kind of grand opening and starting to welcome guests in August. So this is a little bit of a timeline. We kicked off some of this planning May 10th. The Board of County Commissioners approved the contract with our service provider. So we're working on finalizing all of that. We'll have materials and door knocking plans available in about a week. And then after that, we're looking to start to deploy some outreach, neighbor to neighbor as much as possible, as well as with support from county, city staff and others. And then we'll look toward the end of July to finalize what's said here, GNA. I'm sorry, we changed the nomenclature to community agreement. So it was a good neighbor agreement. We're just calling it a community agreement at this time. So that's what that is. And then form the community advisory committee as well. And then early August, we'll have preparing for opening, starting to welcome guests, and then hopefully we will be planning a grand opening and open house for folks in the neighborhood to come by and see what's going on before we have guests move in. And finally, I have time for questions if you have them, depending on how much time we actually have, which I'll ask you, John.
Sarai, would you like to make an introduction as well?
Oh, I didn't tell you who I am. Yes, that makes
No, I mean Maria.
Oh, Maria. Yes. Maria Cortez, our shelter coordinator. She's going to be spearheading the majority of the rest of this project. I've been working on it for a couple of years, and I'm moving into working more on implementing the county's affordable housing action plan to increase availability and affordability of housing in our area. So Maria, I don't know if you want to say just a couple words, but you'll get to know her and see her face more often too.
Sure. Thanks, Sarai. Yes, everybody, my name is Maria Cortez, and I am a program service coordinator. I work with Lane County Human Services Division, and the Navigation Center will be my project, like Sarai said. So I will be overseeing the contract and also be working with the provider, Equitable Social Solutions, as they are gearing up to start operations with and for the Navigation Center. So yes, I will be in touch, and I am sure that we will be in contact, and hopefully I'll be able to join some of these meetings in the future.
Thank you both, and thank you for getting us to here, Sarai, and thank you, Maria, for taking us forward from there on.
Sarai, do you want to stop screen, please? Screen share?
Yes, thank you. I will.
So I have put a request in the chat saying, please enter your name and email if you're interested in either helping with the neighbor outreach and or the community advisory committee for the Navigation Center. And if you decide later to join us, you can send an email to co-chairs. So please volunteer. We've got a lot. It's a heavy lift to go and visit the neighbors. We want to inform of what's going to be happening and getting their feedback. So I would encourage you to do that. Questions before we let these folks go? Jolene?
Thank you. How much time do we have for questions?
We have another 8 minutes left.
Okay. I have a few, and you can stop me if 10 other people want to ask questions.
There's one behind you now.
Got it. Thank you for the presentation, and I share my neighbor's concern about issues related to homelessness for sure. And I have a few questions. One is, maybe you already said this, but it would be great to have examples of how this sort of navigation center has worked in other communities, what the problems have been and what successes have been seen. And I think that would be a question that might come up during neighbor outreach also. I have heard that there are increased problems with theft in the neighborhood when these kinds of centers are set up in neighborhoods. So I'm just putting that out there as like a urban myth, or maybe there's reality to it. And I have a question about the siting of this and the sort of economic circumstances of the surrounding neighborhood. We have expressed in River Road that we very much generally as a community are concerned about housing needs and have supported camps and housing needs in other ways in our community. But we also have a sense that there's a lot going on in our vicinity, which isn't necessarily going on in terms of housing support in other neighborhoods. And so that piece about improving the safety and livability of the neighborhoods, I'm wondering, concretely how that's done and how it's measured. So,
Okay, Jolene, that's 3. Why don't we let them respond to that,
Yeah,
and we'll
that's
move on
all.
to Gary. And if there's time, we'll come back.
Yeah, so I can tackle this. I just want to make sure I get it all. One, what we have seen traditionally or typically in Eugene is when there is a managed facility, whether it's a microsite or a rest stop, like you have at Northwest Expressway, that the city of Eugene and the EPD have found that calls for services have actually decreased around a lot of those locations. I also want to clarify the nature of this particular center. It is not a drop-in center. It's literally a shelter that is also only accessed by referral. So people who are prioritized for resources on the through coordinated entry, which is the way that Lane County and our continuum of care, which is sort of how we manage homelessness services here, will be working together through case conferencing and making sure we're prioritizing folks who will have access to housing resources in the near future. So this will not be a location where people will be kind of lining up or gathering for services. It is very much laser focused on helping people who have been referred to the center to be able to navigate themselves with lots of support and help into permanent housing. So I don't anticipate that there would be increased crime. It hasn't shown, at least in our community, that has been true. Although I'm sure we could look into additional information about how this has worked in other communities. I also really carefully want to encourage us to decouple our perception necessarily of homelessness and crime. People who are unhoused and people who are housed do sometimes participate in criminal activity, but the vast majority of people who are housed and those who are unhoused are not participating in criminal activity. And that's important for us to know. So I do want to just clarify that and know that we're not really anticipating that to necessarily change. And then by way of citing, this was a pretty long-term process. It actually happened before I arrived to work on this project. But I do know that the advisory team of the city manager, the county administrator, and a number of folks between the city and county, city of Eugene and Lane County, worked together on very specific citing criteria. And after they ran through all of that criteria on many, many properties, the 2 that emerged was this location and then another location out on Highway 99 that would have required a full build. There were a lot of, once we got down the road on discovering more about each of these properties, we found that the space on at Four Corners, which is where it was on 99, wasn't actually accessible from the street, and it needed to be partitioned. And so there were some challenges with that site that we weren't able to overcome. And right quick, we at the county were able to purchase this building through the COVID-19 emergency and use it as an alternative care site for folks who couldn't return home to isolate or quarantine during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic. So I hope I answered most of your questions. If I haven't, we'll send more info, and I'm happy to share my contact information with you all.
Sarai, when I first heard about this, I did some online research and I discovered that these projects exist in Portland, San Diego, San Francisco, Chicago, several places. Almost all the feedback that I saw was positive. But most importantly, I did find a report that was done by someone who took those perceptions of problems out to the community and was able to demonstrate that the perceptions are there, but the reality is not, that indeed how property values did not go down around such projects. There was not an increase in crime. So I think that's why we have the community agreement in place, so that if there are problems, we can deal with them. Craig, your hand's up?
Yes. Is the draft contract available for public viewing?
Yes, I will send the latest draft of it to John, and he can share it with you all. It is not completely executed because, like I mentioned, we do want to get neighbor input into it. But yes, the draft is available.
Okay, good. The second
Thanks, Greg. And I would note that there are 0 people signing up to volunteer. Please do so, because I don't want to have to do this all by myself. And Sarai will get tired of seeing me. So please sign up. We need your help. Any last questions or statements? I'm encouraged that this is going to
Craig
happen.
has his hand up.
Craig, do you still have your hand up? You're muted, sir.
Can't figure out how to put my hand down. Anyway,
That's okay.
For the last few years, I've worked with Portland and Multnomah County on this exact identical sort of thing in downtown Portland. My experience is that crime on the street decreases when these sorts of things are developed. In other words, the campers who don't have access to help seem to be more related to crime. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, and please let us know if you can help us, because this is going to take some effort to get out to the community. Okay, Claire, now it's your turn.
And it's nice to meet you, Maria. So next we have all-star cast tonight. William Hearn from the Eugene Public Library is going to clue us in how we can have library services. So Will, are you there? You are. Okay. You don't need the screen, do you?
No, I'm the screen today. I'll be your presentation.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me. First off, let me just introduce myself. My name is Will O'Hearn. I'm the Library Services Director here for the for the Eugene Public Library, City of Eugene. I've been here a little bit more than 3 years. So now I've been here since March of 19. So first year I was finally started to get Eugene, and then everything got twisted on me in that year. So interesting. So I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit today about what we did during the pandemic. Specifically want to talk to you guys about some of the services y'all can use, because I do want to recognize and acknowledge that over a third, but I think less than half, I don't remember the specific number. I think John told me at one point, was it 38%, 37% are within the city of Eugene? I'm not quite sure, but I do remember it's between a third and a half. Oh, I got it. Very good. Are able to do that. So I want to tell you about some of the things that everyone can use, not just those 38% or whatever it is. And then I'd love to get some feedback from you guys, because we're a community oriented organization. We're community driven. And so we want to hear about you guys and what we can do to make our library even better than it already is. So I'll first tell you a little bit about what we've done during the pandemic, give you a little bit of a narrative there. So one thing is I'd like to always note is that we never closed the library. While we did have to shutter our physical doors, just like so many places in March of 2020, we were able to keep our virtual doors open, and we opened them as wide as possible, adding to our already robust electronic collection. And then we actually built basically a youth electronic collection from the ground up, as well as kept our chat and phone services online, and anyone can give us a call anytime. So I want to just highlight that we kept that going during the beginning of the pandemic, because it was really critical at that time with so much misinformation going around about the pandemic. We really wanted to make sure that everyone had that access to information. So we kept our phone and chat up open that whole time. We opened for curbside, which is basically giving out physical materials, back in June of 2020. And then we fully reopened the building back in August of 2020. So we've been open, almost a year and a half now, a little bit more than a year and a half, really. So we've really prided ourselves on thoughtfully bringing back our services. When we provide a service, we want to make sure we don't rubber band that we can offer it one day, but not the next day. So we've done the library thing where we've slowly, thoughtfully, consistently moved forward rather than just sprinting ahead and then kind of having to go back and forth. We tried really hard to be a pillar of stability and a lifeline during the pandemic. So essentially at this point, we're back to almost full strength in terms of our services. There's just a few that are limited by the pandemic and staffing, because just like every other organization, we've had some staffing issues. So for example, one of the few things we don't have is our maker area is no longer, is still not functioning back up to normally is. Couple things we focused on during the pandemic, actually 3 things I'm going to highlight for you guys is access. We really focused on access. We focused on partnerships, and then we worked on the diversity of our collection. So to dig into each one a little bit on access, we actually just went fine free for all our materials starting here on May 1st. We already had 140 folks who were blocked from using the library come back to using the library services. So we're really happy about that. We're actually also did cards for students. So this could be very applicable to folks here. We did cards for all students. So as long as someone's a member of 4J or Bethel, a student of Bethel or 4J, they actually qualify for a card for free, regardless if they live in the library service area. So please tell folks in your neighborhood, if they go to Bethel or 4J schools, they can apply for a free card. They don't have to live within the service district of the library. So I wanted to make sure to highlight that. We worked on our accessibility of our buildings as well. We installed hearing loops, which essentially connects to hearing aids. It's something called T-coil. It's almost like a Bluetooth where it connects directly to the speaker. So instead of picking all the ambient sound around, it's just a nice clean sound that's both at the presentation areas we have and at, oh, I'm getting a thumbs up there, and at the our service parents as well too. So folks can make sure they interact there. We also installed automatic door openers on our restrooms, making sure that people knew if all they needed to come do is to, at our facilities, use our facilities, we want to make sure they felt welcome and invited there too. We also worked on bilingual communications. We put everything we put out on social media and everything else is in both English and Spanish. So essentially, while that communicates, of course, details of our program, how to use our services, it also communicates another message in between the lines, which says we expect and hope everyone uses our services. And that's, we've really prided ourselves on that. And we've also, speaking of bilingual, implemented bilingual story walks in a couple of our parks and potentially looking to expand this as well. So we've actually taken, and this is heresy for some of you, but we've actually deassembled the book. We took it apart, we laminated it, and then as people walk around the park, because we knew not everyone felt comfortable coming in, we actually put a number of signs in order. So as you walk around the park, you can also read a story in both English or Spanish as well too. Our big goal is to meet people where they're at. So that's what we've done. And that was in partnership with the parks here, our great parks in here in Eugene. And so speaking of partnerships, we also partnered with Lane County WorkSource. It's actually one of the quietest successes of the pandemic is what I call it. It's essentially during the beginning of the pandemic, Lane County WorkSource had so many unemployment claims, which are, they're essentially the employment office here in Eugene or here in Lane County. They had so many unemployment claims, they did not have a physical space, they were kicked out. And while most folks were able to go virtual, the most vulnerable, those who did not have the technology or the means, the ability to use that technology, did not have a locational land. And we were able to house them since, I believe, September of 2020, a facility here where they're able to have a physical location where folks can show up and get that job help, which includes looking for jobs, mentoring people, helping them with interview questions. And we've had hundreds of people coming to use the library for that. And the library has actually set aside a place where people can take a Zoom interview, knowing that not everyone has a quiet space where kids, dogs, cats, and everything else in between are running around in the background, which is actually one of my favorite parts of the pandemic. I know there are some good parts in there, seeing everyone's cat or cat tail just going across the screen, I particularly enjoy. We also worked with the Museum of Natural and Cultural History. We worked on something called activity kits, which essentially we knew we weren't giving away we weren't having as many crafts because we didn't have in-person story time, we had virtual. So we actually started sending home folks with crafts. We worked with the Museum of Natural and Cultural History on a grant to provide a number of those kits, and we were able to give 12,000 away of them, not all from the Natural and Cultural History Museum, which had some of their lessons implemented within those activity kits, but we were able to give 12,000 last financial year. So we're really happy about that. We also started with something called hotspots. We started circulating hotspots. If you don't know, hotspots about the size of a cell phone, smartphone. It emits a Wi-Fi signal. During the pandemic, we actually recognized that the internet came from something that was useful to have to an absolute essential, a utility for folks. And so to help bridge that digital divide, we were able to get, we were aiming for 200 to 300, but everyone supported it so much, we were able to purchase 500 of them. We circulate 250 of them the normal way, which is just kind of checking them out, normal circulation, so people can essentially check out the internet. And we're also partnering with the other 250 of them, we're partnering with local organizations to help connect the disconnected. We know some folks are falling through the cracks there. And again, the internet's become from something that's nice to have to an absolute essential utility. And so we're working with organizations that help folks who vulnerable and marginalized populations and help support them, so we can essentially give them the internet to give to their clients to give them the advantages they're looking for. We're hoping that they can take advantage of. We also worked with Transponder on a book group, a diverse book group. We were looking to do our own, but we found another community organization with more expertise in that area. And instead of doing our own thing, we really want to turn outward and be a part of the community rather than being a big fish in a small pond. We want to help all the organizations. That's why we focus on partnerships at this time. We actually worked with them on a diverse book group, giving them books, helping them with facilitation, and then also social media. Getting a time check here, so I'll go a little quicker. And then we also worked on our diversity of our collection. We've worked really hard to increase the diversity of our BIPOC and diverse authors, ensuring that 30% of what we purchased from June of 2020 is written from diverse and BIPOC authors. We've been really intentional about this effort. We do it since it's important that we can see the world through others' eyes. Storytelling literature is an exceptionally effective way of doing that. And so for us in the library, we want to make sure we have as many opportunities to have windows, which are story and experiences from folks different from ourselves, and mirrors, which are stories and experience from folks similar to ourselves that help validate us. In that reflection or window, people can see our own lives and other lights as part of that larger human experience. And since everyone's background is different, it's vital that we have a plethora of resources for everyone in our community to be able to see themselves and see others. And it's not all about purchasing items, we're also displaying 30% of those items as well too. So all our displays, 30% are by BIPOC and or diverse authors. Lastly, I did want to just tell you we had, I'll skip the little bit here as I break down some stats because I did get a time check. I wanted to highlight particularly some services for y'all. John? 5 minutes, okay. I really wanted to highlight some services particularly for y'all because I wanted to make sure I knew, again, recognizing that not everyone can use all the services in the library, notably checking things out, but there's lots of things that folks without a library card can use. So many of our services are accessible without a card and letting times at the same level as card carrying patrons. I also did want to note that if for $130 a year gains anyone outside of the area, full library rights for a year. So you're able to do that. It's a whole neighborhood, a whole household. It's not per person. So a full household for $130, and you can pay monthly installments of $11 per month as well too. But with that said, even if you don't have a card, because we want to highlight those resources, we have something called a seed library here where we actually check out seeds to you. We don't ask you to check them out with a card. You can just go ahead and take them. You can plant them, put them in your garden, seeds. And what I'm talking about is, of course, tomato seeds, pea pod seeds, plant seeds. And we actually do ask you to give them back and return them. And what we mean by that is when you harvest your plants, you can actually give them some of the, package them up, give them back to us, and we can pass them on to the next generation of plants out there, and we can keep it going. Summer reading has just started, and that's for all ages. There's tons of programs for that. It's for both kids and adults, so all of you can participate. We do focus a little bit more on the youth for help with that summer slide. And we have a book giveaway that's open for all kids, and then a tote bag for all adults, and everyone can participate here with that as well. All our programs are free to anyone. We don't check for a card. You don't have to be card carrying member to enjoy. Our story times we'd love to see you at, and our other programs are really ramping up, particularly for this summer reading, as I noted earlier here. Those activity kits, anyone can use. They're in our youth services at all 3 of our different locations. We still are doing those. They're a craft you can take home. And again, I wanted to note Bethel and or 4J students can qualify for a free card regardless of where they live. And we're looking at potentially expanding that to 0 to 5 folks as well, recognizing that early literacy doesn't start at 5. It starts, even some research shows it starts before birth, but we'll start with 0, or we're looking at that potentially. And of course, I want to mention, anyone can come to the library, enjoy any of our resources, read them. Our databases, computers are free to use. Everything's essentially free to use here. Stay as long as you like. And you can read any material you want here. You might not be able to take it home if you don't have the card. I understand that. I want to acknowledge that. And lastly, I want to share with you, it's not the library, but it's the foundation has actually opened up Imagination Library. Has anyone heard of Imagination Library here? I see a couple hands, so I'll give everyone else Who doesn't know, essentially it's a program where you can get a free book every single month sent to your house for anyone 0 to 5. And that recently, since January 1st this year, is open to all Lane County residents. So if you live in Lane County and you know someone 0 to 5 in your life, please tell them about this. They literally send them a free book every single month. It's Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. It's funded by our foundation, and the United Way worked on a partnership on that. So they also are turning out and working with partnerships. I took up all your time talking because I'm very excited talking about libraries. I don't know if you can tell, but I'd love to take some of your questions. I saw some pouring in, and I'd love to hear feedback on things we can do better. We're here to take the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'll take any of those questions. So John, I'll let you help moderate that for me if you want me to pick some or whatever you want me to do.
Claire, this is yours.
Oh,
So if you want to ask a question, go to the response buttons and raise your hand. That puts you at the top, so I can see you. Brenda and then Pat.
Can I still use consumer reports, or did that fall off of the library's, what would you call it, online resources?
we still have consumer reports. You do need a card to be able to use them off-site. If you are on site here, you can use them if you do not have a card. So
I have a card. Okay, I'll try again.
they should work. If not, give us a call. We always want to walk people through. And there are occasionally times where there's like a database error where it's not working well, and that we might not even know about that. So give us a heads up if you try to use it and don't. Give us a call. We'll walk you through it and make sure it's working.
Great, thanks.
Good question.
Pat.
I will. I am a county resident, but I have a library card from the city library. It's an absolutely wonderful library. I agree with Jolene in that regard. The cheek oil is wonderful for somebody like me because I have hearing loss, and it makes all of the difference as long as I remember to turn it on, of course. But it's great. It's also convenient because I take the bus and I can walk half a block and I'm there. That's just kind of a comment. Oh, I did have somebody, I was having trouble logging on, and I had my computer on, and I could get help on the phone while I was looking at my computer, and they were very helpful. And I have a question. Is the library dependent upon serial levies for operational costs, or is the library funded through general fund for the city of Eugene?
So we're actually have a couple of different costs. Our major area of revenue is through the general fund. It's about, of our $15 million budget, about 12 million of that, it comes from the general fund. We have approximately a little, so it's actually 15.3. It's a little less than 12 million comes from the general fund. 2.8 comes from the 2.85 technically comes from the levy, which people passed here. We were very honored and grateful that had passed by 76%. And then the other about 500,000, a little bit more than that, comes from our foundation and our Friends of the Library. We're lucky to have two support organizations. So about $550,000 come from them. So it's a menagerie, but mostly from the general fund.
Thanks, Will. We'll all see you at the library. That's our time for tonight.
Thanks for having me. I'm grateful for that. And I'll send some follow-up with you, John, for information you can pass along. Thanks for having me.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Good meeting, good attendance. One announcement is that we're looking for new board members. So if you feel any leaning towards stepping into leadership on your neighborhood, this is your time. You don't even have to wage a campaign. Okay, thank you, everybody. Good night.